This is Just Common Sense, embracing common sense conservative principles with Dr. Johnny Hunter.
Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to today's program of Just Common Sense, taken from Proverbs 2:7, which says, "He grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. He is a shield to those who walk with integrity." And I just want to put a big reminder out there that you don't want to always say, what did Jesus do or what would Jesus do? You just read the Bible, read the Word of God, and you'll find out what He did. Also, I want to put out an appreciation to our flagship station, WCLN Christian 105.7, which puts these programs out even on multiple podcast platforms for you to enjoy at the time of your convenience. And a little later on, I'm going to hit the headlines first, and then I got to put a big thank you out to Pastor Dale Pascal. But there's some headlines that came out. Here's this week. Right here now, after we voted and all the things that's been going on, but these things are steadily going on. Erica Kirk revealed her message to Jimmy Kimmel in an emotional Fox News interview. And Charlie Kirk's widow, she tells Jesse Waters that Sinclair asked if she wanted an apology from Kimmel. And she said she doesn't need Jimmy Kimmel apology. After the comedian's remark about her late husband. Turning Point U.S. founder Charlie Kirk telling Fox News' Jesse Waters that an apology should come from the heart instead of obligation. This is a wise young lady and a widow that's really handling situations good and really stepping in where her husband had put the machine forward, and she is keeping it going. But she's doing it from a spiritual point of view. And Democrats have been blamed for the government shutdown, according to new polls. There's a Fox News congressional correspondent who has the latest on how the government shutdown can impact, they said, the elections of this week. Anyway, 42% had blamed the Dems. 25% blamed the GOP. 3% actually blamed Trump for the shutdown. And we're going to get into that one a little more in a little bit. But meanwhile, also in headlines, there's a power on the move. Is pilot program the future of EV charging? Was the question on the headline. Because France have set up highway tests that hints at endless EV travel without stops. Driving an electric vehicle, consuming, charging as you go. They've set up a new wireless charging pilot in France, showing how coils built into the road, we're talking about electric coils that can charge your car as they move along, can transfer more than 300 kilowatts of power to moving EVs. The breakthrough can make long trips possible without stopping at a charging station. And meanwhile, here in this country, Las Vegas, police is rolling out Tesla Cybertrucks worth $115,000 each. Came from a donation from a tech billionaire. Tech power couple Ben and Felicia Horowitz donated $2.7 million for 10 bulletproof police Cybertrucks. That's in Las Vegas. And they said the vehicles each one is worth between $80,000 and $115,000 each. And it was a wonderful donation they gave to them. Meanwhile, the people are really being criticizing Trump, and Trump can get himself in some. I tell you, he has a way that he doesn't. Well, the brother needs some discipleship. That's what I always say sometimes. And someone really criticized him because what he did, he came out. He said the citizens that would vote for the mayor candidate, Joe Mandano, he called him stupid on a fiery election day post. And folks, it's just not good just to do that. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi got in trouble because she was busy calling Trump stupid. So whatever happened to good old days. One person did notice a comment, though. That person said the problem is that people are having issue with, which would be considered an unconventional way of running the country. Trump is not a yes man. Trump is a successful businessman. Trump is not running this country like a politician. Trump is running this country like a business. He has taken steps to make it successful. The only reason why people think he's running it differently than he did his first time around, because the country wasn't bad as a mess then when he took it over again. So that's what they are putting out there for him. Actually, I say if you're a good Christian, you're going to guard your words at times. Now, that's all the headlines I just want to put in right now, because I really want to put in a big thank you to Pastor Dale Pascals for last week's program. Of course, you know his guest was Pastor Greg Williams, and he's at the Lake Community Church. They call it Cliffdale at the Lake Community Church. And he talked about what God has placed a vision upon his heart. And this is a young man who's gotten saved, became on fire for God, has become a minister, he's been ordained, and now he's serving as one of the pastors at the Cliffdale at the Lake Community Church. And his heart went out when he saw so many people that was hurting, and with so many churches in this particular area. And so he called it the Fayetteville Renewal Project. And it's a citywide volunteer-only initiative built on 3 pillars: charity, unity, and outreach. And folks, you can actually go ahead and look up the Fayetteville Renewal Project on Facebook, and you should be able to find some things that are going on there. He's just starting, but what he has put out there is very key. And the reason I say this is key, because we're looking at Matthew 25. A lot of people are dependent on the government to do all the supporting of people. And Matthew 25, 31 through 39, I'm going to take time here and just read this one through. You've heard it before, but you need to hear it again. And then I'm not going to read the entire chapter, but just enough of it so you can understand what Christ is really saying to us. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as the shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. He will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." Then the righteous would answer him, saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison or come to you?" And the king will answer them, saying, "Surely I say to you, inasmuch as you did it for the least of these my brethren, you did it to me." And folks, that is a powerful thing. And the key thing I want people to notice in Jesus' statement was that what he did not say. He did not say, "When I was hungry, you got the government to get money from taxpayers to feed me." He didn't say, "I was thirsty, and you got the government to get more money from other people using taxes to buy me milk, Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola drinks, and my beer." He didn't say any of that. I'm saying that because it is the church's responsibility to feed the poor, not the local, state, nor the federal government. Whenever the government gets involved in something, it's not good, because you got some people up there who has another agenda going, and it's not pretty. And you know now, I criticize the Democratic Party because they were the party that legalized and established slavery. When slaves ran away to be free, it was the Democratic Party that passed the fugitive slave law. In other words, when they tried to end slavery and people were trying to get free, they not only were boosting slavery, they made sure you couldn't even get free. They fought against those who was trying to help the slaves be free. So with the fugitive slave law, the Confederate Army was on the side of slavery. That is why Harriet Tubman, who ran the Underground Railroad to free slaves, worked with the Union Army. I hope that history teachers in high school and colleges are still teaching this, so that students are not kept ignorant of what happened and by whom. Now, notice that Indians on reservations today have full welfare benefits, and sadly has destroyed their culture and their youth. I noticed that young black mothers receiving welfare money and raising children without a father has harmed the black community. The number one group who commits homicide and kills the most young black men in our community are black men. That's because those dependent on government welfare checks are on a virtual slave plantation. The man is kept out of the house. This young lady is having to work it alone. And this is not good. It's a virtual type of slavery. Now, in the Testament, we got old school racism that went on. I remember I met an elderly lady when I was in Virginia. And she shared with me that her parents had owned slaves. And she had heard me say something about it, and she had tried to explain to me that her parents did not free their slaves when they said that slaves could be free. She said she didn't free the slaves. And they didn't free the slaves because the slaves had nowhere to go. They did not know what to do. They needed somebody to feed them. They needed somebody to take care of them. That was her excuse. And when I said they could have, she sternly disagreed and argued it was more compassionate to keep them and keep them working for the family rather than letting them go free. Now in college, that was my pre-saved days. I thought of asking her, why did they not just pay them for the years of forced labor with no pay? But I realized her mindset was far liberal, that she felt it was kind to own slaves to work for the slave masters rather than have to work and provide for themselves. Jesus said something. The truth shall make you free. That's in John 31-33. But let me read. A lot of times we always just like to read just that portion of it where Jesus has said that. But let me read the entire thing. Let me just put it in context. Jesus said, this is starting with verse 31. Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Then they answered them, we are Abraham's descendants, and we've never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you were made free? And Jesus answered, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. And a slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you should be free indeed. Now, this is a very interesting thing when he says this, because here are some Jews saying, wait a minute, we're not slaves, we're free. And that's the problem. We got people out there dependent on other people to help them from our government, living in things because they've done something. In other words, I'll tell every young lady out there, marriage is key. Every young man out there, don't mess with somebody else's future wife. Marriage is key. That's the main thing. And if you step into a situation where you are not married, it gets bad. It gets very bad. And if you have a child and then you have to end up on government welfare, whether you want to admit it or not, you have become a slave. And it all comes from sin. Sounds like it's tough to say, but folks, the worst thing about being a slave and not knowing it is that you will not fight to be free. And it's important that you do become free. It's important that you do know what is going on. Now, understand right now that people are upset because the government has shut down. And as I said, during that government shutdown, there's people that's been blaming the Democrats. 42% say they did it. 25% say the GOP did it. Some say Trump did it. Now, you got to remember, the Republicans' House passed a clean. That means there's no bills attached to it. Continuing resolution. They've done this every single year for years. A continuing resolution to keep the government open. Democrats, now the House of Republicans passed it. They keep the government open so people could get paid. And then they'll go back to business. It's just temporarily. Democrats in the Senate voted to keep it closed unless $1 trillion of Obamacare was included, because they don't want people to see, because the Obamacare, according to the bill, the things run out for it, and you have to pay what it really costs. And they don't want that to happen. They don't want people to see what it's really like. And they were saying, no, we're going to keep the government shut down unless the Republicans agree to pass a bill. They add $1 trillion back into that thing so we can make sure that the Obamacare is in place. They need 60 votes to pass this. The Republicans might have the majority, but they don't have that majority that is needed to pass it, the number that's needed. And Chuck Schumer made that call to shut down the government and not pay non-essential workers, which is concerning because they're saying that not everybody needs to be working in the government. Everybody is not essential. There's a lot of things in this one, but Chuck Schumer made that call. The same Chuck Schumer that who threatened people years ago, even when the Republicans could have shut it down for some things. They said, no, you can't do that. That's bad because that's going to hurt people. He doesn't care that it's going to hurt some people. So now we have these SNAP payments, and people are not getting paid. Now, the worst part of it is anybody... the people that are getting paid, by the way, are the congressional members. Everybody in the House and everybody in the Senate, they getting paid good, really fine. Other things and stuff, but the SNAP payment, this is where they're saying, oh no, people are feeling they're hurt from the SNAP. But then, because of this, someone took a notice of what was really going on with the SNAP program, and they were shocked at what they found out. And this is a clip that he made to show you what SNAP has really been doing and why they're having problems.
There are 42 million people in this country that need food stamps on a weekly basis. And we're saying people deliberately instead of Americans, because most of the people that are on food stamps aren't even from this country. 45% of Afghanistan immigrants are on food stamps. 42% of Somali immigrants, 34% of every immigrant from Iraq, 23% of Haitians, 59% of all illegal aliens are collecting food stamps, meaning that most of the people getting food stamps from the U.S. government and the U.S. taxpayer are not even Americans. Think about that. And we didn't know about any of this before the government shutdown started, but thanks to Democrats, we can confirm tonight that millions of Joe Biden illegal aliens, people who crossed the border when Joe was president, are now collecting food stamps from a program funded by hardworking American taxpayers.
So you have to remember that now. So we're dealing with the Biden administration to open up these borders. Let all these folks come in. They're here illegally, and some of them over here committing some horrendous crimes, and yet they are getting money. Now, if this wasn't the situation, those who really deserved it, need some help, probably would have got a little bit more. But the main thing of it is that church would be in a position to step in. And this is why I appreciate so much with Pastor Dale when he brought on Greg Williams, that pastor. And he was saying, come on, wait a minute, we need the Fayetteville Renewal Project, where unite Bible-believing churches. We could pool people, resources, knock on doors, fix what's broken, connect families to service, and serve with zero political agendas. In other words, no agenda. They're not doing it to get nobody to vote or anything. And that's what a church is supposed to be doing. Folks, if you're out there on SNAP and you're not in a church, you got double problems going on. Because I guarantee you, on that final day, every one of us, there comes a day this body gives out. And where you go after this body gives out has a lot to do with where you are right now. I will say the first thing you should do is find your church that believes that Jesus Christ is the Lord and get there. The next thing you could do is go ahead and do your best to get off that slave plantation. Let the Lord guide you, but the Lord can't guide you unless you've totally surrendered to him. Now, for those of you who voted in this last group election, I want you to watch and see which way your votes have gone. And I want you to remember there are political factions out there. And what those factions have been supporting is confusing children about their gender, whether or not they're a boy or a girl. And you know how little boys can be when they're young. They're thinking, and I don't like girls, and they're tough. And girls, sometimes they make the best of friends, and two girls holding hands and they just having a good time. And somebody else will come along with those two little girls and say, oh, see, that means you really are, you're a lesbian. You're really not, and they confusing these children. And if that's not bad enough, when you get, sometimes we had what was called in our school a tomboy. And that girl, she was all girl. But that sister was just as tough as any guy out there. She climbed trees, played with us and everything. And it was everybody knew she was a tomboy. But I tell you what, she grew into a woman and grew into a mother. She was not confused about whether or not she was a boy or a girl. She just knew what she liked doing. But then now we got people out there mutilating girls who think they can become boys. And now they're castrating little boys who think they are girls. You also have this political faction out there that opened the national border of our nation and let everybody in, criminals and bad actors. They even let people in that do not like this country, they hate this country, and they let them in. Folks, we even have people who've been elected to national government seats. One of them who stood on national TV and announced that her nation she was submitted to was Somalia, not the United States. Folks, there's only one faction out there that's doing this mess. Well, two factions, a bunch of them. And presently, even though when they open the borders and let everybody in, now we got an administration that's come in, they've closed the borders, and they're wishing and they're saying, if you want to come in, you're going to have to be vetted to get in. And we have a faction that's fighting this current administration for closing the borders. In fact, they are openly opposing through violent law agents, through violence. They're opposing through using violence. They're coming against law agents who try to remove illegal aliens, including criminals. We have factions out there that are supporting the murder of a child while in the womb. I bring it back up again. Supporting the exploitation of children sent across the border by sex traffic groups. In fact, children crossed that border and they was, these just little children, and they sent them off to people without vetting that it was their mother, their father, any kinship whatsoever, and thousands of children went missing. They are supporting the exploitation of those children. And there are groups that they're still pushing for more taxation to pay for their crazy ideas. They have no love for this nation under God, and that's crucial. And they're willing to destroy it from the inside. Now, when I say that, I'm looking at people like what Bernie Sanders is doing and those that are standing with him. Bernie Sanders let you know he's a communist. He done told you that to his face. So the devil is let you know, yes, I'm playing the role of the devil, and I still want you to vote for me. This group includes the Democratic Socialists who have hijacked the Democratic Party. Now, folks, when I say hijacked, I'm being polite. Because quite frankly, there was people in the Democratic Party that turned the reins over to them. They didn't even have to fight to hijack it. There were folks that actually just gave it to them. So you notice now for whom you've just voted. I want you to now start watching what happens locally and nationally. The leaders you elected, do they help children or are they going to hurt children? The leaders you elected, do they fear God or they don't care what the Bible says or what God says? Watch and reflect. Because if the person you support supports murder, so do you. like the policies of the Confederates to go to war to keep slavery, told what the Democratic Party was all about, even Malcolm X. Now the policies of these elected affect preborn babies. How these policies affect preborn babies and children tells you what they really are all about. It's all in the same line. The devil makes himself known. What you got to use is just common sense. You can see him and you can resist him. And whatever you do, don't forget, Jesus Christ saves.
Just Common Sense, a common sense approach to life with Dr. Johnny Hunter. Get involved and embrace common sense conservative principles when you visit learninc.org. LEARNINC, learninc.org. To listen, like, and share, look for Just Common Sense anywhere you listen to podcasts.